Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Live with CDP podcast on this Tuesday, January 24th in snowy Guelph. Just 1 second, guys. Just fixing my chair here. I just want to say thank you to everybody for watching Live with CDP podcast today. And I'm looking forward to bringing my guest on. Just 1 second. I'm going to be bringing him on shortly. Tonight's guest is Joey Battaino. He's a vice president of communications and broadcasting and play-by-play voice for the OHL's Saginaw Spirit. And I'm looking forward to speaking to Joey about his career in TV and radio, and also talk about a little bit about how the Saginaw Spirit are doing so far in this 21-22 season, and how much the pandemic has impacted the OHL schedule as well. So if you guys can just give me one moment, I'm going to bring on the voice of the Saginaw Spirits, Joey Battaino. Hey, Joey, how you doing?
Hey, good, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, by the way.
It's my pleasure. I appreciate the invitation and happy to oblige.
And one of my friends who's with the Spirits watching this game today, Dick.
Oh, good.
Dick.
I'm glad that even in Guelph you guys have some friends over there that are from the Spirit.
Well, yes, definitely. And what I'm trying to do with my podcast too, I love sports, obviously, but I'm trying to get as many guys from around the OHL to come on too, and I'm lucky to be a part of it, a small part of it, with being with Rogers TV as a camera operator for the Guelph Storm games.
You know what? Then, and our television partnership with our local community outlets, Rogers, Cogeco, around the league is so important when it comes to the exposure of the league. So the league certainly appreciates the work. And I know myself personally, even though we're not on one of those stations, obviously in the US, we have our own network essentially of people who are employed by the team that behind the scenes do a great job for us in putting on our games so that people in Ontario, families, fans, etc., can all watch the Saginaw Spirit home games, which is great because 5-6 years ago we didn't have that. So it's nice to be able to provide that as well.
And then obviously people can tune in on the internet now, and also listen to your games on the radio. What are your games carried on radio wise in Saginaw?
We're very lucky. We have a great partnership with WSGW, which is a local FM talk and sports station. So we are on the FM dial, which is great. And then of course there's streaming of the station, whether it be on their website, which is WSGW.com, and they also have an affiliation with iHeartRadio as well. So there's a lot of different ways to stream our broadcast at home and on the road. And we're very lucky. We have great television and radio partners with the Spirit and have for a long time.
Okay. And I was going to say, I was just thinking about this today. It's hard to believe the Saginaw Spirit have been there 20 years now, because I remember when the franchise moved from North Bay, and I was like, I don't know how well they'll do in Michigan, but 20 years they've been pretty successful.
Yeah, and I think the biggest part of that is ownership. You know, when Dick Garber bought the team and brought them to Saginaw, he was, first of all, he is very ingrained in the community here. He owns many local car dealerships, not only here in Saginaw, but also Chicago and as far as Delray and Florida. So he's kind of all over the map. But Saginaw is home to him, and it was very important to him to right some wrongs in the hockey community that had gone on previous to the Saginaw Spirit, when there were some different pro hockey teams here in the late 80s and 90s that didn't work out. And so when the Spirit did come here in the early 2000s, he made he invested a great deal of money right off the bat to improve the arena. And then when I got here in 2015, he made another investment in the arena, putting in a new video board and also essentially a brand new locker room. So even though the Dow Event Center is up there in years, you would get on the inside and you wouldn't know it. And especially all the areas that are inhabited by the Spirit are first class and up to date. And Dick Garber and the ownership group here in Saginaw is the reason for that. So it's been a great success, and it seems to be growing. Certainly, that long playoff run we had in 2019 helped
Yeah.
locally drive some more interest into the program. And unfortunately, it seemed like the pandemic might have stopped what could have been a pretty good run for us. So we're almost back to square one here, building again. But we got there once, so there's no reason to believe that we can't get there again.
Absolutely. And I was thinking once things get better with this pandemic and it's a lot easier to cross the states again, my goal is to go to games in Erie, Flint, and Saginaw because I've been lucky to have Sean on from the Otters, Jack on from the Firebirds, and now yourself. And I'd like to try to do as many OHL arenas in the next, hopefully the next year or so as well.
It's a great league for that, Chris, because every building in the league seems to have its own character, whether even if it's one of the newer buildings in the league, like even Niagara or even Mississauga is relatively new. But you go to the Kitcheners and the Odd and even Budweiser Gardens, which again is a relatively newer building, but it has that certain feeling when you walk in. There's some really great buildings in our league, and even the Bayshore, which is up there in years, but it has a unique character about it. It's a good league for that, and I would definitely encourage you to come to the American markets because it's a different hockey experience than it is in Ontario. I think the fans are different in terms of the way they react to certain situations. Certainly, you look at Flint, Erie, and Saginaw are all former professional hockey markets, and in a time where hockey was a little more rough and tumble than it is now. And so especially, well, I think all three, Erie, Flint, and Saginaw, you could have a very ruckus atmosphere, and I think again. I think a lot of people got a taste of that for the first time when Saginaw made their deep playoff run and saw what this building is really all about and how big of a home ice advantage it is for the Spirit when there's 4,500, 5,000 people in the building. It's an intimidating place to play, and the same goes for Flint and Erie when it's a full building for sure.
I'm so glad to see there's more stability with Flint and the franchise is heading in the right direction as well. I was kind of worried when they moved from Plymouth, which was an established market for a long time, into Flint, but it seems like the last couple of years the Firebirds have got more stability from ownership, and it seems like the franchise is heading in the positive direction.
Yeah, you know what? And I mean, I can't speak to I'm not around the Firebirds day to day, but I can speak to the market because I did work in Flint previously in my career for 5 years, and it's a great hockey market, and there's good hockey fans there. There's people that have been around the game for a long time that work in Flint and attend the games in Flint. It's funny because I worked for the Flint Generals their very last year of existence in 2009-10, and some of those fans that were going to the games then, I still see them now, going to Firebirds games, and they're ticket holders and they're supporting the team. And obviously we're competitors on the ice. But when I see things like that and I see those fans that are there and they're still rooting on their home team, it makes you feel good. And you feel good about the situation for them when you see since then there's been two different hockey teams in Flint. And it seems like this is the right fit. They've made the renovations in the building. It's a good level of hockey for that city. And hey, they're having a great year. They look like they could be a team that goes a long way here this year.
I was gonna say, maybe I don't know if the league will look at it this year or even next year, but would you think it would be a good idea for the OHL to maybe possibly have a couple more US based teams instead of having three? Maybe eventually try for maybe six, maybe possibly.
I think, yeah, Chris. I think ideally you'd want a WHL setup where there's a US division, and I think now we're seeing what the benefits of that could have been with the pandemic and the limited travel right now. If there was yeah, even one or two more American franchises, this in a way wouldn't have affected us at all if we would have had a schedule formatted to have a U.S. division. So yeah, something worth looking at in the future. Certainly, they'd have to be Northeast based or
Yeah.
Midwest based cities, and then you'd have to go the route of do you adventure into an NHL market? Is that market too oversaturated in the Northeast? These are all questions that people, much higher than me and a little over my pay grade,
Yeah.
but it's fun to talk about because I think maybe now more than ever, given the circumstances, it would be something to definitely take a look at for the future stability of the Ontario Hockey League and the three American-based teams that are currently in the Ontario Hockey League.
Yeah, I really think the Buffalo area could support an OHL team. And I think it would be great because they'd be close to Niagara, close to Hamilton, and close to Erie as well.
I agree with you. I think that's like the obvious. It would seem as if Buffalo area. We don't know if it would be like in Buffalo or not, but the Buffalo area would be the ideal area and an area that would be familiar with the Ontario Hockey League product, given Niagara, given Hamilton, given Mississauga, and the area close to it. I think you'd have a lot of natural rivalries, as you said. And, it would all be dependent on what the standard would be for an OHL building because the Sabres do have that practice facility where they've, held prospects tournaments and things of that nature. I don't know if it seats enough for an OHL franchise, but again, it's an option. And there's been other cities that have been, believe me, we're not the first people to talk about this. So there's been some other cities that have been floated around, but I think you're right. If we were spitballing here and had to name a city, I would say the Buffalo or Buffalo area would probably make the most sense.
Definitely. Before I get into some questions, we already talked about your owner, Richard Gruber. How often does Jimmy Devillano and Chris Osgood, do you see them around the arena once in a while with their schedules?
Yeah, like limited as of late, like since the pandemic, obviously the travel is a little more difficult. Jimmy's retired now, and I believe he's moved down to Florida permanently. So he comes in every once in a while, and I know our general manager has conversations with Jimmy quite often. So yeah, I mean, I don't know how much input he has on day to day decisions that are made, but it's more of I think like maybe a mentorship role where Jimmy is giving some advice to people, which he first of all, what an amazing hockey mind, and probably will go down in history as one of the greatest hockey executives to ever live when it's all said and done. And he is a great guy. And the times that I've met him, we've had good conversations as well over the years. And it was a blast to just pick his brain about everything to do with hockey. And he's super open too, which was really neat. And then with Chris Osgood, he was great. Again, he's taken on a little bit larger role, I think, with Bally Sports and covering the Red Wings, basically working every night, and then traveling now as well a little bit. So we saw Chris a little bit more earlier on when he first took ownership stake in the team, but we'll talk every once in a while. And yeah, he was super helpful right off the bat, especially with his broadcast experience that he has, and just like giving some pointers as well. And then obviously on the hockey side of things, an accomplished goaltender, was great to bounce some idea. I believe Evan Cormier was our goalie at the time, and he would give some ideas to Evan. So yeah, both guys were really involved off the start, and now a little bit lesser, but certainly still involved with the team, just maybe not so much day to day.
Okay. And I was going to say I still think he's a hockey Hall of Fame goalie with his 3 Stanley Cups and 400 plus wins. So I hope one day he does get in. But I've seen some of his work on Belly Sports with Detroit, and I think he's really fit in well with John Keating on Belly Sports with his personality.
He's good at it. He's really good, and I enjoy it too. I think he does a really good job, and I'm glad that he's taken on more. He's got a lot of insight to give, and goalies have a really unique perspective of the game. I think that's why they make such good analysts, because they're seeing the entire play on any given night at the NHL level. And so when it comes to dissecting it in real time, that's why guys like Darren Pang and Brian Boucher, and you can go down the list of all the goalies that are analysts or former goalies that are analysts now, Chris Osgood being one of them, they just have a knack for being able to dissect the play in an instant, because that was how they made a living for so many years doing it in the NHL. So good to see his success. Yeah, you're right. I enjoy it. I watch the Red Wings broadcast quite often, and continued success for him. It's again, I grew up a Red Wings fan, right?
Same
So
here. Same
yeah,
here.
so
Yeah.
and I was born in the early 90s. I was born actually in 1990. So it's so Chris Osgood is the guy I watched growing up, and my favorite Red Wing teams as a kid
Yeah.
were usually the net was tended by Chris Osgood. So it's really cool for him like to be an owner of the team, and now I get to say, you know, Chris Osgood in a way is my boss. So it's kind of neat.
Yeah, he's the same age as me. And when I played goalie when I was younger, much younger, I wore number 30. So I related to Chris Osgood age wise, and the fact that goalie is what I like to play when I played hockey, and number 30 is what I wore. So, uh,
Did you wear the helmet cage combination too, or no?
yep, 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 yep.
Okay.
Yep. And I also, when I started playing hockey back in the early 80s, obviously I wasn't good enough to play pro or OHL. I remember my late father buying me Cooperalls, hockey
Oh
pants.
yeah. The
So
actual pants.
yeah, the Cooperall hockey pants. If you ever Google it or look on YouTube, you'll see the Flyers, the Whalers, and then a lot of OHL teams had Cooperalls back in the early 80s. But one thing is, when you got tripped or fell on the ice that was still flooded, those pants would send you flying.
Oh, I bet. I bet,
Oh
because they
yeah,
had the vinyl on the outside
yeah,
of them, right?
yeah,
Oh yeah.
yeah. So I had them for about a year or whatever. But yeah, as for goalie, I love playing goalie because you were on the ice the whole time, and you were a big part of a team's success if you did well or you didn't do well.
Sure. There's a lot of pressure that comes with being a goalie too, because you know the team could be playing well, and you know maybe you go 5 6 minutes without any
Yeah,
action, and you get a tough shot point blank, and it goes in, and everybody throws their hands in the air and says he should have had it. So it's it's not an easy gig to be a goalie in the OHL, and the leagues higher than that. Once you get to pro, it just gets harder and harder. So I give goalies a lot of credit for a
yes,
lot of different things, because it's a very tough day to day. And people forget it's not just the games, too. I mean, these guys are standing in there every day in practice and taking shot after shot after shot. And then they get in the game. And then in the game, they might face 40 or 50 shots. So it's a tough
def-
gig.
definitely. Okay, I'll just get to some questions. Let's see. The first one I wanted to ask you: can you just tell my audience here in Guelph a little bit about yourself, and when did you decided to pursue a career in broadcasting?
Well, I mean, as most people who, you know, get into the game of hockey, I was playing as a kid, and it was, you know, it became clear as time went on that it wasn't going to get me anywhere that I wanted to get it, that I wanted to get to, I guess I should say. And so I started to try to come up with ways to stay in the game. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. Um, I wasn't a big school guy, so my grades weren't great in high school, and I wasn't sure about college. Gone on a couple of visits, but I didn't feel great about going to school for another 4 years or 6 years or whatever it may be, right? So I started to, you know, come up with some different things that I didn't have the credentials to really, you know, coach or anything like that, right? So I was trying to be creative and come up with ways to stay in the game. And I found myself, you know, I took a telecommunications course at a vocational school that was, we would leave our high school and go to it a couple hours a day when I was in high school. And there was a little bit on camera work that came with that too. And I found myself like really enjoying the sports side of it and not being super intimidated by being on camera. You know, I was a little nervous at first, but once the light went on, I was able to do this, pretty easily. And so there wasn't that initial, freeze that some people get by being on camera. So I think that's the intimidation of it, right? If you can get past that, you're on your way. And so I had a good conversation with my teacher and about what I wanted to do. And he just told me in high school that he thought that there was a chance that, if I wanted to pursue this, that there would be an opportunity to do it professionally. And so I took that advice and I went to unfortunately I believe it's merged now with Lawrence Tech, but I went to a school called Specs Howard Broadcast School of Broadcast Arts, and it was specific for broadcasting. Every day we would do a different area of broadcasting, whether it was behind the camera, in front of the camera, sports, weather, news, etc. We'd have to do different video editing projects. And so you basically learned everything there was to know about the day-to-day in television and or radio. And so I actually wanted to pursue a career in television. I wanted to be a sports reporter. At least that's what I came up with when I, left that school 10 months later. And as time went on, I had graduated in June or July, and it was getting into August, and I think it was late August in 2009, and I was 18 years old, and I didn't hear anything, and I was starting to wonder if I'd made a mistake, like if this was even for me. I didn't get any internships. A lot of my classmates were getting internships at local news stations, etc. And then all of a sudden, I got a call from my career advisor over at the school and said, I have this hockey job that just came across my desk, and it's for play-by-play. And I had never done play-by-play professionally, obviously, in my life. But what I did used to do when I was younger, and I think a lot of kids can relate to this now, is on my video games, whether it be, NHL 04 or 05 or whatever, I would turn down Jim Houston's commentary, which he's one of the best. So no offense taken, or no offense given on that. But I would turn down Jim Houston. I would call the game myself, like as it was happening. And that was where I got my early reps. And I remember the first exhibition game I did. It was Flint versus Port Huron in a rink called the Polar Palace that no longer exists. And I screamed into a computer for 3 hours, and that was my demo tape. And Generals hired me, and I've been lucky. I've been gainfully employed ever since, and it's a great gig, and I'm extremely lucky to work in hockey. But that's kind of how it started, was just a love of the game that I just didn't want to give it up, and I would have done just about anything to stay in it. In that first year with Flint, with the Generals in 09, I did do just about anything and everything involved in hockey.
Yeah, when I was younger, back in the well, I'm a little bit older than you. I did okay in school and went to college for law and security, but I always liked broadcasting. But unfortunately, back in the 90s, they didn't have this technology of
Right.
podcasting, and there wasn't the opportunities with Rogers TV to volunteer. So a couple years ago, I got a taste of doing some camera work for our local basketball team here, and I liked it. They actually paid me for it. They referred me to Rogers TV, and they took a chance on me as a 47-year-old man doing camera work for the Storm. And after I started doing camera work with them, I said I wanted to start a podcast. And ever since, I've been doing a podcast almost 2 years now, and loving doing this and being on the camera or behind the camera as well. And I'm hoping I get an opportunity from doing the podcast and being with Rogers in radio one day.
Chris, you're never too old to start in this business, man. I mean, that's the one thing that I learned, or you're never too old and you're never too young. And that's what people told me right off the bat when I was 18 and I got into it, and I was in pro hockey, and I was way out of my depth. Like, honestly, I can say that now looking back on it, I was way out of my depth. I didn't have the experience to be there. But I had the confidence to be there. And I think that's sometimes half the battle. And I learned a lot from, it was only a 7-team league back then in the IHL, but there were some, the great Bob Chase, the broadcaster for the Fort Wayne Comets, was rest his soul. He was still alive and still calling games back then. And Terry Ficcarelli was in Muskegon. He's been around forever in pro hockey. And Dennis Stuckey was in Port Huron, and he was instrumental in early on. And these guys had 15, 20 years in the business. Bob Chase had 40, 50, maybe even 60 years in the business when I was in the league back then. And these guys they were great to me. They were unbelievable. And they didn't thumb their nose at me and treat me like a snot-nosed kid. They gave me an opportunity to learn. And I tried to soak up as much as I could from those guys. And I'm glad I did, because as soon the Generals folded at the end of the year, and I've been working in junior hockey ever since. And maybe I wouldn't have had the influences that I did if it wasn't for that 1 year, in pro hockey with all those guys that had all that experience.
And I was going to say, when I started my podcast, the first 4 months, I wasn't very good and I had trouble getting people to come on. But then ever since, I've been getting 3 to 5 guests on a week, and guys like Ken Daniels and Dan Shulman and Tom McCarthy from the NFL and CBS and the Phillies. And yourself and Mike Stubbs. Two guys that I really like is those guys in London, even though they are a rivalry of the Storm. Mike Stubbs and Jim Van Horn are really great guys to have on, and Jim especially speaking to me about what I'm trying to do as well.
Yeah, well, yeah, Jim, both of those guys are incredible. I mean, we're really lucky in the OHL where we have so many guys that do that. And I should say people that do this, because there's women who also are involved in broadcasting in the OHL. There's so many women and men that do this that are unbelievable people. And Mike Stubbs and Jim Van Horn, no different. They're great guys, and I'm looking forward to. Hopefully we'll finally see them. I think we've had a couple weekends here against the Knights that have gotten postponed. So I'm I'm really, I got my fingers crossed that I'm finally going to see them this year. It's been a long time, but though they're great guys, Mike Farwell
Yes,
and
Chris
Chris
Pope.
Pope and
Yep,
Kitchener are unbelievable guys. Larry Malott, this guy's been around a long time. He was great
yep.
to me when I first got in this league in 2015. I mean, I was still a pretty young kid then, and he was good to me right off the start. So, like I said, I mean, I can name everybody, but it's a good league to be a part of, and there's guys, and even Freddie Wallace and Owen Sound. There's guys that have been
Yep.
doing it for a long time in this league that are really good people and have a lot of expertise to share. And how could I? There's two guys that I have to mention, because I can't forget Jim Gilchrist in Kingston, because first of all, unbelievable guy, and he's been around forever, and he's a tremendous guy. But Lee Cunningham and Sarnia, Lee's a big reason why I'm here in Saginaw. And I really appreciate everything he's done for me in my career too. So I don't want to get too far without mentioning those two guys either.
Yeah, and I've been lucky. Greg Sloan's come on from the London Knights, the
Yep.
TV guys, really good guy. And two guys that'll be here Friday in Guelph, Steve Bell and Manny from the Windsor Spitfire, great guys too. And this is another reason I would like to get into radio. Hopefully, it's not because of the fame or the money part of it.
I hope it's not for the money.
No. It's everybody in this profession. It doesn't matter if it was Dan Shulman or Jerry Howarth or Ken Daniels. Everybody has been really supportive of what I'm trying to do, really encouraging, and that's why I want to get into it, because there are a lot of good people in this industry.
There are, and what I've found over the years, especially when I was younger, it's intimidating to reach out to those people that have that type of experience, because especially growing up, in Detroit, and you don't want to have a negative experience with those people because you looked up to them your whole life, and you don't want it to be a negative experience, right? So in a way, it's almost you rationalize it by saying, oh, well, maybe it's better if I just don't reach out, but you have to reach out. Yeah, that's
Yes,
the only
absolutely.
way.
Yep.
You have to reach out to those guys. And what I've found, I mean, I don't want to say 10 out of 10 because that's ever, but 9 out of 10 times you're going to get that full on support, no matter what level of broadcaster you're reaching out to, because what we all have in common is at one point in our careers, we were you, Chris, or we were in that spot where we were just starting out, or we got that first gig. Now, how do I handle that? Or now I'm established in my career. How do I handle that? So we've all been there, and we're all in different spots in our career, and we all have different advice to share. So what I found, and what you're finding now, is that in this business in particular, everybody's willing to share, but you do have to ask. You,
Yes.
you do have to
Yes.
ask.
Yes, and everybody thinks, "Oh, you're at home doing a podcast is easy." It's a lot of work. You have to produce them. I produce all my shows. I do all my book guessing. I have to coordinate. Like I work at my current job midnights, so I have to be flexible with my guest schedule and availability as well. And like I said, I'm learning every day more and more about the industry from doing the podcast and with Rogers TV.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one, it seems, prerequisite for working in this business is that you're busy all the time.
Hmm.
And really, and the play-by-play aspect of my job is just the tip of the iceberg. Um, there's the travel, there's the day-to-day PR. The PR side of it is bigger workload this year because of all of our schedule changes. There's the marketing side of it. There's all these different parts of it that I think day to day people don't see or people don't understand, which is fine. I mean, they don't need to. They don't need to understand what the crux of my day is, but it's I think, oh, it must be great. You show up to the arena at 5:30 and you put the headset on and you call the game. Well, no, I spend about 6 hours a game prepping for
Yeah,
that one game. And then when that game's over and we play at 2 o'clock the next day, I'm probably up till 2, 3 in the morning or close to it, prepping for that game next day. So it is a grind. And
yeah,
there's 68 of these in the OHL. There's 80, I think there's still 82 in the NHL. It's a long year. And when it's all
yeah,
done, I'm usually out for about a week
yeah.
sleeping.
Definitely, and and that's the thing too. Even doing Rogers TV, the setup, the teardown, there's a lot of work in a broadcast or a radio broadcast, and I've been able to see that with Rogers TV as well.
Yeah, there's time. I mean, there's there's all kinds of different work involved. There's manual labor involved there, as you're finding out on your side of the camera. There's manual labor involved. It's
But I
it's a
love it. I love it.
it
I
is.
love it.
Yeah, we're not sitting here making excuses. It's just all part of, again, like, I think a lot of people, when it comes to their consumption or what they think television is, I think a lot of people just eat the sausage. They don't see how it's made.
Yeah,
So, it's nice to be able to peel the curtain back every once in a while. And there's a lot of, if you're going to produce good TV, if you're going to produce good radio, you don't just put the headset on.
yeah.
That's the
You,
crux of it.
as Jerry Howarth told me, the former Blue Jays broadcaster, do your homework and try to be prepared as much as you can. Chuck Swirsky told me that too. Doing your homework and being prepared is so important in this industry.
It's everything.
Yeah.
I'd even say over prepared, because you can always not use things, but
Hmm.
if you come underprepared, you can't make it up.
Nope.
So
And
you're in a much better spot calling a game if you're over prepared. And I I'm not a big stat prep guy. I prep storytelling because
mhm.
that's actually a spot in my broadcast I'm trying to work on. A self critique is a little bit better storytelling day to day. And so I prep harder or longer, I guess, for following up storylines, etc., than I do with stats. I
Mhm.
can read stats. You know what I mean? Storylines need to be well thought out and well executed, and that's where I spend. But everybody's different. Every broadcaster is different when it comes to their prep. It's whatever makes them feel comfortable when the light goes on.
Absolutely. And Eric Smith from the Raptors I had come on too. And when I first started this Joey, the podcast, everything was all scripted in that. And Eric gave me some good advice. He goes, it's okay to write stuff down or what you want to say, but talk to your guests like you're at an arena or a stadium. And it
Mhm.
makes for a natural conversation, makes for a better podcast or even radio as well.
He's 100% right. If you try to script an interview with questions, you're not really listening to the interviewee because you already know what you're going to ask them. It's more important to hear the answer and sculpt the question from it than it is to sit there and rifle. Okay, that's all
Yep.
right. That one's done.
Yep.
On to the next one.
Yeah,
Because
I
then
admit,
yeah.
I admit when I first started this, that's what I was doing. But I've been trying to. I've gotten out of that, and listening skills is huge. Sometimes a guest like yourself or Mike Stubbs, you ask him one question, they can give you the answers to 5 questions that you were going to ask. Go ahead.
Absolutely, and that's why I think again it goes to preparedness for these type of things, because you're right. You could ask me a question and I'd rifle off the answer to 5 of your 10 questions you had for me, and then you're like, uh-oh, all the way down to none, and now you've lost your place.
Yeah.
So it's just it's a it's being able to improvise and adapt on the run. That's live
Ab
TV and radio.
ab living. Ab
Ad
living.
libbing and
Yeah.
just being ready for anything and everything.
Definitely, and I try to be myself on here, and obviously I get a lot of great stories from my guests, and then I try to relate some of my stories from my life on here as well. Storytelling, like you said.
Sure, yeah, that's a big part of it. Like a broadcast start to finish, specifically television, you have a little bit more time to inject these type of storylines, and this is why you have sideline reporters and things like that to really bring a story home. A commentator could start it, sideline reporter jumps in, delivers the story through with more detail, boom, back into the play-by-play. In radio, you're following the play, you have to be so descriptive. That takes more time. You don't have as much time for the storytelling side of it, and it's better that way because I tuned in to listen to the game. Now, if you're going to give me a story, that's fine, but I want the game. That's why I'm listening to the broadcast on the radio, right? So the game, time and score, etc., that trumps everything on the radio side of it. At least in my humble opinion. I mean, again, you're talking to me right now, so this isn't Bible, but this is how I can only relate to myself. This is how my broadcasts go, and this is what I see fit to be important night to night. And the one thing I do that I try to do is I probably have 10 to 15 fans that I trust let me know what they want. That I'll talk to twice, 3 times a year just to make sure that I'm delivering what they want. Now, with that being said, you're going to get probably 15 different answers if you ask 15 different people, right?
Hmm.
So I try to take that into consideration. But I think it's important. These are the people that listen every single night. If you're not delivering what they're there to listen to, then they're not going to listen anymore, right? So it's important. And again, these are people that I trust that can give me valuable opinions and advice. And I don't listen every time, but sometimes if they give me something and go back and listen to a couple and I say, oh, okay, yeah, that makes a little more sense. I could talk more about the opposing team. I could integrate a couple more stories from the other team and educate our fans on what's going on over there in Kingston because we only see them twice a year. Things like that.
And that's what I try to do with my guests. Try to get some feedback from my guests, and then from my viewers as well. Just what I did okay, what I did good, or what I could improve on as well.
Yeah, and I mean it's a slippery slope, Chris. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is that, and that is pick people you trust to give you that
Yes,
type of
yes,
advice, right?
yes,
Because not
yeah,
everybody's going to be so kind if you
yes.
open it up to a large pool of people. But again, you'll know as time goes on. You'll know the people who are giving you real honest feedback, and then people who are either blowing smoke, telling you it's great when it's not, or the flip
Yeah.
side, telling you everything you're doing is horrible when it's not. So it's just finding that small group that you trust to give you some honest feedback. And again, it's having the confidence in yourself to know and fish through what's useful and what isn't.
Okay. Are
Yeah,
you still okay for a few more minutes, Joey?
of course, of course,
Okay. I just wanted to ask you a few more questions.
sure.
How did you end up coming about the role of position of Vice President of Communications and Broadcasting and Play-by-Play with the Saginaw Spirit?
Originally, or just the promotion I got recently?
Originally as
Originally?
well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was actually in Odessa, Texas, and, as a team, things were changing down there. We were in the North American League, and, it was a former pro market, and unfortunately at the junior level they hadn't had a whole lot of success. I think they're having a good year this year, which is great, but they haven't had very many good years since they went junior from pro. And they felt that they needed to make a change. My first year there was 2013-14, and the person who hired me was let go that season, and then by the time the 14-15 season was all said and done, every single front office position had changed except for mine. And so you can kind of see where this is starting to go as the year goes on, right? So at the end of the year, we kind of, mutually agreed that we were just going to go our separate ways. And so I was looking for work for the first time in my career. And that was actually the year that the Plymouth Whalers were moving to Flint. And having that previous experience working in Flint, I thought it would have been a pretty good fit. I reached out to their president at the time, Costa Papista, who's uh, a really good guy, and I've gotten to know him real well over the last little while. And he's actually running the Flint City Bucks, which is a soccer team there in Flint now, and having great success. And the team's having great success too. But anyway, long story short on that is it didn't work out. It wasn't a good fit there in Flint. But Costa knew a couple people that had reached out. He had reached out to about the job, and one of those people I knew pretty well, and they reached out to me and said, "Hey, I told them about the Flint situation. Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be a good fit, but looks like Lee Cunningham's going to Sarnia. That's his hometown, and the opportunity came there, and so looks like Saginaw is going to be available." And it was the first time in 7 years. So Lee had been there for 7 years, and just went in and interviewed with Lee and had a good experience, and then didn't hear anything back for about 2 weeks. So I wasn't super duper positive about it. I had actually interviewed with another team in the USHL and was ready to take that opportunity. But I'm from Michigan and saw and really wanted Saginaw to work out at the end of the day. And when I did get a call back from them to come back and do an interview with Craig Goslin, who's the president managing partner, I jumped at it, and we had a good interview. It went about 2 hours, 2.5 hours, which was funny because we didn't even really, we talked about the job, obviously, but I'd say probably 60 to 90 minutes of that was talking about life and what we see as important, day to day, and values, etc., and making sure that those lined up. And it seemed like a really good fit from day one. So must be a good fit. It's 7 years later, and things are going real well. I've gotten a promotion since then, and I'm a member of management now within the organization. And it's been extremely fulfilling to work for the Spirit, and it's a great group of people, top to bottom, first class organization. And we're coming off probably the most success we've had as a franchise here. I think we're in that cycle right now that it might be a tough year, at least this year, but we'll be back before it's all said and done. And because the reason we'll be back is because we have good people on both the hockey ops and front office side, and we won't be down for long.
I was going to say, and you guys are at it. I think right now you're currently ninth in the Western Conference, but there's a few teams just slightly ahead of you. So you guys still have a good shot of getting that playoff spot. Number between, I would say, sixth, seventh, or eighth. I do think the top 5 teams are pretty well determined, but I think the number 6, number 7, and number 8 spot are still up for grabs. From
I
what
agree
I've
with
seen.
you. Yeah, I
So,
agree with you 100%, Chris. I think there's plenty potential there, and there's no real clearly bad teams.
no,
We just played Erie 2 times this weekend and split. They're a pretty good team. They're playing some of their best hockey of the season. They had won 4 games in a row a week or so back. So there's no easy games in this league, and our schedule is going to get tough coming up. We got the Sioux on the road on Wednesday. We got home and home with London this weekend. So it's going to be difficult here down the stretch because there's some pretty good teams that we haven't seen yet. But at the end of the day, it is a good learning experience for our players. to play in some meaningful regular season games down the stretch, and hopefully a good enough result in those will lead to more meaningful playoff games and more experience. And I think this year, more than probably any other year, I think there's potential for a 7 to beat a 2 or a 6 to beat a 3 because of how crazy this year's been travel wise, etc. I'm not sure there, and there's a lot of parity this year. There's no real top dog on either side, East or West, and I just see potential there. If you can get in, you could win a couple games. You could win a series as one of the lower seeds this year, I think.
This is one of my questions that I came just in my head now, and I meant to bring this up with the other guys too a couple weeks ago. With all the postponed games, is this league going to be able to get all 68 games in by the end of March and have the playoffs start on time? Or do you think they're going to cut some games from the schedule and then shorten the playoffs because there's still more games getting postponed? I just wanted to ask you about that, Joey.
Yeah, the people who make those decisions are on a different pay scale than I am. So I'm actually glad about that because it's not an easy decision to make.
No.
It's going to be tough to get 68 games in for some teams, given some teams are affected by this more than others.
Yeah, the Storm went a month. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay.
Storm went a month without playing, and now they've played 5 games in 8 days, and I'm like, wow. It's like, and then there were some teams that were able to still play a couple games
Right.
the past months as well.
I think it's especially difficult, Chris, because not everybody's in the same boat. I think that's what makes it more challenging. That's what makes it difficult for Guelph, who's in the midst of trying to win a division. And some of the hard part is some of these teams have more to play for than others. Just quite frankly, I mean, that's the rub of the green. You got some teams that are going down the stretch here trying to win a division, other teams trying to sneak into the playoffs. The games are equally important, but it's a tough situation. It's going to be extremely difficult to not push back. But it seems like that's the direction here. Like you just said, they played 5 games in 8 days. We just played, I believe it was only our second 3-3 this year. I mean, don't get me wrong, we've been slated to play more, but we haven't been able to get them in.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a grind here down the stretch. I do believe the idea is to have the season end on time, which for us, I think is the first week in April. So we'll go with that for now. And if something changes, I mean, I don't know how far back they could push because everything it's the Memorial Cup and then back, right? So it's not like you can just keep pushing the regular season back because eventually you'll have no time to play all the playoff games. Because if the Memorial Cup is on that date, it's on that date, right? So where do you go from there? Do you shorten the playoffs? It's not ideal. You'd like to play full-on best-of-7 series. Shorten the regular season, and maybe there's some teams that could have gotten in the playoffs that don't, or vice versa, or could have won a division but didn't. Tough call. Yeah. It's a tough one.
I guess this subject could be an hour long as well.
Easily.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. I'm just you still got a couple more minutes, Joey?
Sure. Yeah, fire away.
I was gonna say, I'm gonna skip the one question. We've already talked about the return of the OHL. I'm gonna bring this one up because I want to know a little more about the Spirits. What are your thoughts on the 21-22 Spirit team so far, and which players to watch out for when they come to Guelph, Kitchener, or whatever to keep an eye on for your team?
Well, what I think about the season so far is that, obviously once the trade deadline came and, our captain Cameron Baber is traded to London, I think I was actually surprised there wasn't more trades, but I've been told that it was very difficult to execute a large size trade this year, especially being in an American market, given the border situation, etc. Right. So, but trading Cam Baber, one of your overage players, playing the younger guys a little bit more. It's clear the direction of this team is a development year, right? So With that being said, it's not so much about the wins and losses as it is getting, some of these younger players some reps and giving unsigned or undrafted older players an opportunity to be signed, right? So this is what this year's turned into, and you hope that at the end of it, when it's all said and done, you've done well enough to play around in the playoffs and maybe surprise some people. It's unfortunate where Saginaw is at, because you could argue that the Spirit might have lost the most during the pandemic. You had the conference final team in 18-19 that you know
Series with Guelph was a hell of a series.
series with Guelph was right down to the end.
Oh yeah.
And you have to, three with the series 3-1, you have to feel that, if Prosvetov isn't suspended, Murray isn't suspended, and Millman doesn't get hurt, that Saginaw wins one of those 3 games. So a little bad luck there.
Yep.
Then the next year, you get the midseason pandemic, and it shuts everything down. And we had gotten some roster luck that year. We got Bodie Wild back from the American Hockey League. That doesn't happen very often. So we get some roster breaks there. We keep Perfetti. We got Suzuki at the deadline. That, to me, was a Memorial Cup caliber team. Never saw it in the playoffs because season got canceled. Then you lose the full season. And even that team, if you get Perfetti back, you might not get Suzuki back, but if you get Perfetti and Millman back, and then, maybe Blade Jenkins is an overager, etc., that could have been a division winning team. That's a big window in this league.
Yep.
You don't usually see 3-year windows with hockey teams, but we never saw it. And that's the really,
Difficult.
challenging thing, and a little bit disheartening, to say the least, that we didn't see that. But the good news is, everybody here on the hockey side of things feels like this is a group that can compete down the road. It won't be tomorrow, though, and our fans have to understand that, that this year we probably will take our lumps down the stretch. We're playing some pretty skilled teams here to wrap up the season. But this is all part of it. We weren't a great team in 2016, 17 either, but we missed the playoffs that year, but we came back. We made the playoffs the next year. We got smoked in the first round by the Sioux, but that's okay because everybody learned what it takes. And then you come back the next year and you go to the third round. So you're just starting that cycle all over again. And for players to watch, when it comes to players you'll see here in the future, and players that have potential to be here two more years, I look at the draft eligibles in Minchikov and Pavel Minchikov and Matyas Sapovalev as projected first round picks. And these guys are really, really elite, in back-to-back import drafts in the first round. Dave Drinkel knocking it out of the park. Not an easy thing to do from a scouting side of things, is not only get your first round import picks to commit on back-to-back years, but to have them be elite talents is pretty good sign. And so Minchikov's been great. Sapoval has been great. You get Lennox here this year, and maybe hopefully an overage year. He's a goaltender, so maybe the Islanders send him back to junior next year. If they do, Saginaw has a real chance again to be a good team as soon as next year, which is great to see. But you do need to see some development from your younger guys, and you do need to make those incremental steps as the season goes on. And certainly one thing you don't want to do and avoid doing when you're a development team is going backwards in any area of your game. You want to continue to see growth throughout the year, even if that means, win or loss, you want to continue to see growth. And I think by and large, we have. By and large, we've seen that growth. So I'm excited about the future. This year is definitely a development year.
Definitely. And I really thought that was going to be the same with the Guelph Storm being the youngest team in the Ontario
Right.
Hockey League, but their young talent has developed, and I might be a little biased here. I think George Burnett should be up for Coach of the Year as far as I'm concerned.
Well, right. And then on the recruiting side of it, you get Pastajov too. And I know that's not taken into consideration that he does both jobs for Coach of the Year, but to recruit Pastajov and then to coach up these young kids, George done a great job. And he's a really good coach at this level, and he knows how to get the most out of his players. And yeah, Guelph, you're right. I don't think anybody, myself included, had Guelph even in the top 4 of the conference when this season would be all said and done. So credit to the team, credit to the young guys, and hey, they're going for a Midwest Division championship here down the stretch, which for the Storm fans, I know that cycle with Merkley early
Yeah.
on, that was
Yeah.
tough because it went a little
Oh yeah.
longer, I'm sure, than they would have liked.
Yeah.
It seems like
Absolutely.
this cycle has really fast forward here.
Forward. Yeah.
Yeah, and Guelph fans should be excited about that.
Definitely. And I just got two quick questions to ask you, Joey. I wanted to ask you this one. I know favorite OHL arena besides Saginaw, obviously, to broadcast a game from, and what's your favorite away OHL city to visit so far in your career with the Spirit?
Well, I'll probably get a little crap for saying this, but my favorite OHL arena besides Saginaw is Flint, and it's only because I'm very it's now I've called just as many games at the Dow Event Center as I have in Flint, but that was where I started my career, and I feel extremely comfortable in that building. Going in, calling a game, the sight lines, etc. I know exactly what to look for. I know exactly what to expect. There's no surprises when we play Flint from a broadcasting perspective, and so I think more or less it's just a really really good spot to call a game from. And when there is a good crowd there, the atmosphere is really good in Flint, and the games are intense when it's Saginaw Flint. So we're treated to that too. Hopefully, our fans don't get too upset with that answer. But I favorite OHL arena other than Saginaw would be Flint to call a game. Favorite city to visit. I like Owen Sound because of because it's quiet and it's kind of picturesque. Unfortunately, we don't get to spend a whole lot of time there. I kind of wish we went there more often. But one place we do go that I really like Kingston. I like the vibe in Kingston. It's kind of older, but it's upbeat and there are parts of it that are newer. It's got a lot of history there. And I enjoy walking around the city and just everything. I really enjoy when we and don't get me wrong with Saginaw, we only go once a year, but I like the vibe in Kingston and I like walking around downtown Kingston and just seeing everything. It's a pretty neat city.
Yeah, unfortunately, with the pandemic, we're not going to see the Eastern Conference teams this year until the OHL Championship, and I really would have liked to seen Shane Wright play.
Well, yeah, same here. We got the chance to see him play in 1920. Thankfully, it was one of our last games before the pandemic. I think it was the second to last home game we played was against Kingston. So I was lucky to get a view of him in our building and lucky to get in the game in Kingston as well. So, but I haven't seen him play live in a while, and I know he's come a long way since then. Even and wow, what a talent! And we're extremely lucky to have him in our league. I know we don't get to see him, but just to have him in our league and just putting on a show every night. And I don't know, he's getting some criticism lately from people, which drives me nuts because people just love to pick at things. And he's a great player. He'll figure it out. If he's slumping, he'll be fine.
Okay, and my last question I wanted to ask you, just one second, I will bring it up. Actually, I'll ask you with my head, remember it. Any advice for those looking to pursue a career in broadcasting, TV, and radio? And where can my audience find you again on social media?
Sure. This is the best advice I can give that people don't want to hear is you have to be extremely selfish in your life decisions to do this. And that's the stark reality of at least if you're going to be working at the team level or the network level, being a broadcaster, you're away a lot. And it's much easier to start if you're single and young and can move anywhere in the country or outside the country and not have to think twice about it. If you have a family and you've laid down roots, etc., it's very hard to do this job at a high level when you're still now if you're established, it's different. If you're established and you're in a market and you got roots down and all that, great. That's the dream, as they say, right? But getting there, yeah, you have to make some extremely tough decisions that some people might view to be selfish decisions. And that's just the reality of the situation.
Yeah, I'm kind of in a lucky situation as I am single. I don't have kids or whatever. So if I do one day get an opportunity in radio, I'm willing to move or go where the opportunity is.
That's the biggest thing. When the opportunities do come up in this business, you have to take them. You have to jump at them because they're few and far between, and you don't know what's going to be your big break, right? So you have to be open to every opportunity uh, that comes your way, and hope that it's the right fit, and do your homework, do your research on the city, do your research on the place. Uh, and in my experience in going different places in my career, I've reached out to people who have worked for that team or in that city or in that market. What's it like day to day? You know, because you'll get the dog and pony show always, but what's it really like when you get in there day to day? And that's the questions you need to know, so that you're not blindsided by something and you've moved halfway across the country and now you're now you're kind of stuck in a bad situation. So that's my biggest thing is, man, when you're starting out, you got to be selfish and you got to make very, very tough decisions and be able to live with them.
Okay, that's great advice. And where can my audience find you again on social media, Joey?
I believe all my social handles now are at Joey Battaino. So Instagram I'm on. I don't know. I post some work stuff on Instagram, but I'm mostly, if you're following me for OHL and Spirit stuff, Twitter at Joey Battaino, and then I also have a professional Facebook page. That's Joey Battaino as well. So you can give me a like on Facebook too, and I post periodically there too. But mostly for Spirit stuff and OHL stuff, Twitter at Joey Battaino.
Okay. I was just going to say, Joey, I know I kept you a little longer than 45 minutes
It's
today,
okay.
but I want to say I really enjoyed speaking with you and learning how you started up in the business and talking some Saginaw spirit as well. And I really appreciate you coming on today.
Well, I appreciate you having me, Chris, and I appreciate getting a little background on you and what you're looking to do, and wish you the best of luck. And if there's anything I can do to help, advice, etc., let me know.
Definitely. And maybe in the future, I can have you come back on again and talk a little more about the spirit.
Absolutely.
And I believe you guys will be in the playoffs. I have a feeling Saginaw will be in the playoffs.
Well, I that's the hope, right? And this is a good group. It's scuffling a little bit right now, trying to find their way, but they will. And you're right. I do think this is a playoff team, but they do have to get over this hump. There is something to be said about meeting adversity this time of the year and conquering it, and they have to do that because that's where they're at right now.
Definitely. We'll definitely keep in touch with you. And hopefully, I'll get to run into you at the Sleeman Center when you guys visit the store when I'm working with Rogers TV doing the camera work.
That would be great. I'm looking forward to getting back across the border. I really miss going over to Ontario. The people are great. They treat us so well. So I can't wait to get back. Hopefully soon.
And I have a family in Michigan, and I can't wait to be able to go over to Michigan and visit my cousins in Taylor, Michigan.
Yeah, I saw the Tigers hat, so I
Huge
appreciate that.
Tigers, Pistons, Red Wings, Michigan Wolverines, every team in
Love
Detroit
it.
except for the Spartans and the Lions.
Well, I don't blame you on the Lions.
So, all right. Well, have a good night, Joey, and have a great game call tomorrow night Wednesday in the Sioux. And then good luck against the Knights on Friday and Saturday night.
All right, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Joey. Have a good night, buddy.
You too.
Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed my podcast tonight with Joey Battaino. He is the Vice President of Communications and Broadcasting and their play-by-play voice of the OHL's Saginaw Spirit as well. And before we go, I'm just going to play a little video clip of some of Joey's work on here so you guys can see some of his work.
Saginaw Spirit are back home here at the Dow Event Center as they get set for two big home games coming up this weekend.
Saginaw Spirit and the Sioux Greyhounds. I'm Joey Battaino. I'm joined in the broadcast booth by Dennis DeRozier and Rosie. 4-1 the Spirit come out, but it was their specialty teams that really won them the hockey game. 7 for 7 on the penalty kill, and they go 1 for 2 on the power play, and the power play goal is the game winner.
Well, Joey.
Yeah, and I think it showed early. You know, they were met with a little bit of adversity off the first shift, and Chris Lazary even mentioned, he didn't get off to the start that they had wanted to. Obviously, Ratcliffe scores there 40 seconds in, but it was almost like that goal kind of took the pressure off Saginaw a little bit.
On the left wing.
Goal, his first of the playoffs.
Score! Tippett! Out of the corner, 3 quick ones for the Spirit. They lead it 3-2.
There goes Homer. That one's hit high in the air to left center field, and it is over the head of the center fielder. Homer rounding third. He's going to try to score, and the throw goes over the cutoff man's head. It's a triple for Latta, and Homer scores. It's 6-4 here in the bottom of the 8th.
Gone. Couldn't clear. 6-on-4 now for the Spirit, trying to tie. Wild shoots. Blocked by Toropchenko. Tippett kept it in. Tippett shoots. Missed. Rebound back to him at the right point. Wild shoots. Score! They tied the game. Bodie Wild.
One and one on Proctor. That one's drilled to right.
Say goodbye.
Way back. Out of here. 3-run home run for Proctor, and that puts the Sugar Beets ahead 6-3 here.
Saginaw dangerous here. Perfetti one-timer. That one blocked. Buzdecker behind the Guelph net. Centered it in front for Perfetti. Picked off there by Suzuki, and then he gave it away. Perfetti moving in. He shoots a score! What a play!
As the voice of the Saginaw Spirit, Jerry Battaino. And Joey, I tell you what, record-setting year for this ball club here. Tell us a little bit about how much of a pleasure it's been to broadcast this team.
Well, it's been a joy, as you can imagine, when a team wins this many games and this many points. Hasn't happened here in a long time.
More about this game tonight, Joey Battaino, voice of the Saginaw Spirit, joins me. Now, Joey, I hate to play devil's advocate, but the Spirit had chances to close out the series without forcing a Game 7. They dropped the last 2 games. What do you attribute those losses to?
Well, I don't think they got enough shots on goal. When you look at it, they had 20 shots in Game 5 and just 19 in Game 6, and really didn't protect their young goaltender the way they had hoped. So Game 7, the slate is kind of wiped clean here. You have 1 game, and it is on home ice for us. So hopefully the guys can come up with the best game of their lives here, and we can hoist that trophy. Ethan Cardwell made his OHL debut on Friday night against the Erie Otters, scoring in his first game. The Curtis, Ontario native will hope to continue that coming up this weekend.
Yeah, at the time I didn't know it was going to be the game winner, but, it's pretty cool. Just getting the first game in and being with the boys, and, the win was huge. So, yeah, it was a great opportunity. Yeah, it was huge for me, and knowing these guys for the month I spent here earlier on in the year, which was really nice. I felt really comfortable coming in and, hoping to keep that going through it this weekend.
Anyways, guys, that clip was courtesy of Joey Battaino's YouTube channel. And again, you can follow him on Facebook and Twitter at Joey Battaino as well. So I just want to say thank you for everybody watching this live on YouTube. Please subscribe if you haven't. Thank you to everyone watching on Facebook and Twitter at Chris D. Pame as well. And just going to read some comments here. Dick, thank you for watching. Appreciate it. And Ted, thank you so much for watching. Appreciate it. And I really appreciate everybody watching, Ted and that. And let's see, Mason, great interview. Thank you so much. And Dick, can you save this podcast? Yes, my podcast will be saved on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and also downloaded on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts as well. And let's see, Darla. Hi, Chris. Hi, Darla. So thank you for watching, Darla. And let's see, Dick, you wrote a great Twitter piece on broadcast work. And yeah, great guest to have. And let's see, Mark Richardson, great guest. Thank you so much. And Dick, thanks, Chris. Thanks, Joy. Well, like I said, I appreciate everybody watching. And just to let you know, my next Live with CDP podcast is going to be tomorrow night, Tuesday, January 25th at 4 o'clock. My guest is going to be Mookie Hawkins. He's a sports director for Power FM and WFOA, FO 1080 AM in Buffalo. And Mookie is also the beat reporter for the NFL Buffalo Bills. So we're going to talk about Mookie's career in radio and working in the Buffalo market. And we're going to also talk some Buffalo Bills football and his thoughts on the Bills' 42-36 loss to the Kansas City Chiefs yesterday in one of the greatest NFL playoff games of all time as well. So Mookie tomorrow at 4. And then Wednesday night, guys, at 7 o'clock, I'm going to have Mike Hogan, the longtime radio voice of the Toronto Argonauts, coming on Live with CDP podcast as well. And also, guys, just to let you know, Live with CDP podcast, the audio version is downloaded to Google Podcasts, Anchor FM, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Spotify, Castbox, and LinkedIn as well. And let's see, guys. Also, I was going to say, I'm going to try to talk to Mookie about what his thoughts were on all the playoff games, including the Bills game yesterday against Kansas City. Josh Allen has proven me wrong. He is an elite quarterback. To me, the best quarterbacks in football right now are Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and Joe Burrow as well. And when I talk to Mookie tomorrow, I'm going to give you my predictions on the AFC conference game and the NFC conference games as well. We got the Bengals and the Chiefs at 3:05, and then at 6:30 we have the Niners and Rams at 6:30 on Fox as well. So, all right, guys. I hope everybody has a great night, and look forward to tomorrow's show at 4 o'clock with Mookie from Power FM in Buffalo, and we'll break down, talk some Bills football and NFL as well. So anyways, I hope everyone has a great night. Thank you, everybody, for watching Live with CDP podcast and listening later on audio as well. So again, thank you to Joey Battaino, the voice of the Saginaw Spirits, for coming on Live with CDP podcast tonight. Have a great night, guys, and we'll see you tomorrow at 4 o'clock for another edition of Live with CDP.